All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abhishek Ganguly from VDart. Before we get started with these fantastic speakers and with this amazing topic, I just want to go over some ground rules in terms of how to use this webinar. So as an attendee, you'll be able to ask questions directly to me. If you feel free, if you feel as though there's something important that you would like to cover, just message me directly. We will also be conducting some polls. So between the questions, we would love it if you could engage and give us some insight as to our poll questions, and that too will steer the discussion. So to get started, I would like to introduce the host for this event, our Vice President of Business Development, Bruce Hay. Bruce, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic today. Doing very well, Abhi. Thank you. Well, good day to all. We are so delighted to hear from many of you from around the globe that are attending this webinar on supplier diversity during COVID-19. Before we start, VDart would like to say thank you to all the men and women who have fought for freedom in our country. We wish everyone a safe and enjoyable Memorial Day holiday. A little bit about VDart. We provide digital skills and beyond talent and solutions for Fortune 1000, large consulting firms, systems integrators, and managed service providers, MSPs. We are meeting the needs for leading technology skill sets, providing contingent staff, contract to hire, permanent staff, as well as statement of work solutions across the stack of digital and disruptive technologies. Please contact us for more information. Well, let's begin with our panelists. We've got a super lineup today. Collectively, they bring decades of experience in supplier diversity, as well as a diverse background in operations, procurement, finance, and accounting. Our first panelist is Nedra Dickson, Managing Director, Global Supplier Inclusion and Sustainability at Accenture. Welcome, Nedra.
Thanks, Bruce. Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, and really looking forward to a great discussion today. So please make it interactive and ask lots of questions.
Great, great. Our second panelist is Kris Oswald, Director of Supplier Diversity at UPS. Welcome, Kris.
Thanks, Bruce, and thanks so much for including me and including UPS in this conversation. It is so important that we talk about supplier diversity and the impacts from COVID-19. Very timely, and I'm thrilled to have this discussion with you and Nedra and Terrez as well. So thank you.
Great, great. Welcome. And our third finalist is Terrez Thompson, Vice President, Global Supplier Inclusion and Diversity at Coca-Cola. Welcome, Terrez.
Thank you, Bruce. As with Kris and Nedra, I'm just delighted to be here. VDart is one of my favorite diverse suppliers with Stan as a great leader. I think, as Kris alluded to, this subject is very important. I think actually it's having a conversation like this and starting to focus on how you move beyond COVID-19 and design the right framework for diverse suppliers moving forward is critically important. So thank you for hosting this, and I'm looking forward to the conversation and the questions.
Excellent, excellent. Let's move to question one. I'm not seeing it on my screen. Are you seeing it?
I see it. This is Terrez.
Yep.
All right. Well, I've got another screen. We'll go ahead and move forward. For some reason, my screen didn't move to it. But COVID-19 is proving that we need more resilient supply chains. How is this crisis affecting your supply chain of most critical commodities? And can you please talk about some tangible actions your organizations took to turn this massive challenge of business continuity into meaningful change?
Well, Bruce, it's Kris. I'll jump in if you like. I'll jump in. This has really been, in my 30 years in the transportation industry, we've never seen anything like this. This is I hope once in a lifetime now, the type of disruption that we're experiencing in supply chains. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on UPS's supply chains, maybe for some obvious reasons, but I will say a couple of things and then make some comments more generally on what's impacting a lot of us. The impacts we're experiencing have been very, very different by commodity. and it has been fortunate that through a lot of planning and a lot of our direct purchases, for us, you're talking about fuels and vehicles, trailers, and so forth, that we plan redundancy and a certain amount of inventory to build us some cushion. But even with that, you can't really be prepared for something of this scale. And what has been beneficial to us is the ability to flex and move our network and move our equipment and move our fuel where it needs to be. So that flexibility within our network has been very valuable to us because we have kept operating. In fact, these days we're busier than we are in a normal time of the year. This feels a little bit in terms of volume and amount of activity and amount of packages going to people's homes. It's like it's a holiday season, just sort of much more difficult right now to get through. So certainly been some impact that way. The other big area of impact for us are things like outsourced call centers and so forth, where I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more later, but the impact of having to get people to work from home right away and what that does to your back office processing when that gets disrupted. But what I really want to mention, because I'm not sure how much of a view people have into this, is just the unprecedented impact that this has had to airlift and our capacity to move product around the world. We are a part of that industry and dependent upon that industry. But when we started seeing passenger airlines and those flights and travel bans start happening, that reduced most of the airlift capacity for freight across the globe. And I'm not sure if folks realize how much freight is really handled in the belly of passenger aircraft. So when passenger flights had to be canceled, we lost a lot of airlift. That was a big cause of this PPE delays and getting stuff from one place to another. In fact, I think it was April, when you look April year over year, we had airlift down by about 40% of capacity. So even in trying to address shortages, even while factories were still working, just the lift capacity alone has been and continues to be a challenge, quite frankly, until we get more passenger aircraft in the air. So we're not done with this yet, but charter aircraft and more freighters, more UPS is certainly helping the network as a whole. But we're hurting from a supply chain industry, losing those passenger aircraft for sure.
Yeah, very good. Good insights. Terrez, what about Coca-Cola?
Yeah, I think it's real appropriate that Kris came first. I mean, they really are the experts in supply chain. And what I would say about the Coca-Cola company is that, as with most organizations, we've had to shift and pivot. It's very interesting, because on the one hand, we have our food service clients, restaurants, et cetera, who've been heavily impacted. And we obviously have seen a diminishing of demand there. But on the other hand, we have our at home. So those customers that are going to grocery stores, ordering from Amazon, et cetera. And so it really has forced us to think innovatively, think differently. One of the things that I will say, and to some extent it may sound trite because I know a lot of companies are saying it, but it really is true. We as a company, the Coca-Cola company, have gone through significant changes in the last 5 to 6 years to digitize our business, to really show Wall Street that we are a growth company, despite the fact that we're over 135 years old. And so in some ways, that push to digitize, to reorganize, rationalize, and look at digital solutions across our whole organization, including supply chain, has allowed us, and I'm not going to suggest that it was completely seamless, but it has allowed us to adapt to the COVID-19 environment in a way that has really been good in terms of what we produce and what we distributed. One of the things for us is, so a lot of our management employees like myself are able, fortunately, to work from home, but we do have a huge supply chain organization, manufacturing operation, that is also coupled with our bottlers. A lot of times when people see the trucks, they think it's a Coca-Cola company, but that's our bottlers. And so we have been working together as a system to ensure we have continuity of supply and places where we have become dependent for global suppliers, we've had to shift and we've had to pivot. But one thing that we've kept in mind is the health and safety of our employees, because there's quite a force out there. And so we have enhanced our sanitation. We have become very focused. I'm sorry, did you want to interrupt? We have become very focused on PPE and the like. And then the last two things that I will say is that I think people kind of know it, but they don't really know it. You know, one thing that we've said is that as a company, we've always been able to get through these difficult, challenging times. And so our massive supply chain that we are known for and our transportation system actually was as a result of the World War II and a crisis there. And then the other thing too is, although we're very global, we're very local. So the products that we get in the Southeast region are coming from bottlers and operations that are in very close proximity. Same with those in Germany, France, Africa, etc. And so we are finding that to be an advantage as well. But digitization has been important, innovation, adaptability, and really adjusting to our customer needs have been a focus from our supply chain operation perspective.
Good insights. And I think a lot of people may not realize, like you mentioned, the Coca-Cola bottlers being a separate entity within the Coke family. So, Nedra, anything to add?
I think, you know, Kris and Terrez covered quite a bit, and with both UPS and Coca-Cola being an Accenture client, we want to make sure, again, that we are in collaboration and making sure that we can help our customers in any way we can. And as Terrez and Kris said, is that I think all of our companies, as many on the phone, really focused first on our safety and the well-being of our employees. Accenture has about 505,000 employees globally, and I was very happy that we successfully made sure that everyone was able to be working from home. And as you can imagine, we work at a lot of our client sites. So, and able to do that, we not only had to make sure that our employees were safety, but we did that as well as protecting our client data and making sure security was one of the top things as well. So when you think about that, it's becoming a new workplace reality that Accenture is calling our elastic and digital workplace. And Terrez mentioned digital, and that's something we've talked about in the supplier diversity space for years. And I'm hoping a lot of our diverse suppliers now can understand the importance of being a digital company. And in that, you know, in that elastic and digital world, you're going to see so much around, you know, technology and your virtual work environment and making it a seamless networking. You know, here we are having an event that's virtual now. I think that's going to become more of our reality. And how do we ensure that our supply chains are going to be able to navigate these uncertainties that we have? So we have to make sure that we understand the potential scenarios and how we can mitigate some of those changes. But one of the things that Accenture looks at it as not it's not just a reopening, as people are saying. We're looking at it as a new beginning. And that's where we're looking at. We now have to have an active reinvention of this new beginning of how we're going to work and ensure that our supply chains will not be interrupted in the future. And you think about, when I listened to what Kris was saying with UPS, I wouldn't have thought that would be something as an interruption in the supply chain. But I think now we're seeing the complexities and how we need to really collaborate to work together. And that's what Accenture is really putting forward, to make sure we're collaborating with our clients, with diverse suppliers, and making sure that we'll do this to have a future supply chain.
Yeah, I like it. I wrote down another Nedraism, elastic digital world. So thank you for that. Virtual, seamless. And I know Sid's listening, so I'll be using this at work. Let's move to a poll question number one. And I might be on a delay, Avi, so go ahead and go to the first question. And you guys can let me know when you all see it. I'll read it.
Go for it. I can see it.
You can. Very good. Why are diversity and inclusion efforts more important now than they were 6 months ago? So we're asking the audience, the attendees, if you'd please take a couple seconds here. We're going to leave this poll open for a bit here. And once the web team at VDart sees that the poll is slowing down, you can show the results. On about a 10 or 15 second delay, so.
Absolutely, Bruce. So in 10 seconds, we'll be showing the results.
All right.
I wanted to answer the poll, but the machine's not letting me. I think you shut me off.
We did. Panelists are not allowed. All right. And Avi, you may have to read the results, Avi.
Absolutely, Bruce. So it seems that 21% believed that right now the answer is to kickstart the economy through small businesses. 11% believe it's to build a more innovative supply chain. 9% believe it's to develop a new, robust and resilient supplier pool, essentially. But here's the interesting part, Bruce. 57% think it's all the above. All of the points are valid and important.
Wow. Any thoughts on that, panel?
I was trying to answer all of the above as well. I just couldn't. You wouldn't let me do it. But I think it's fascinating. I'm working on a blog post on this very thing right now, which is why, I really believe that there are many things conspiring, and this pandemic is one of them, but it's not the only thing that is conspiring to say, supplier diversity is poised if we can adjust in how we work to have an even bigger impact on our organizations. And I won't bore you with all my thoughts behind it, but I think definitely the resilience of the supply chain. We've seen so much trend towards supplier rationalization in the past, and now all of a sudden people want to diversify their supply base, right? So there's so many changes going on right now. Now is the time to be connected to this network, so we can figure out that path going forward.
And I'm gonna agree with everything that Kris said, because I think we all, in different ways, Nedra and all of our colleagues are saying that. But I'm gonna push back a little bit and be a little philosophical. It's Friday afternoon. I haven't had my first glass of wine yet, but one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about. So one, the whole notion of driving the economy. I mean, I think we all know that small businesses and entrepreneurs are really a driving force behind the economy. And at the end of the day, especially with the consumer products company or a company like Kris's, and I think I see you more as B2B, Nedra, but I still think it applies. If that economy and your communities are not thriving, you're not going to have a successful climate to grow any business. But and I do agree in principle, and so I don't want any of my suppliers who are out there coming with me with an entitlement attitude that it shouldn't be considered philanthropic. But I do say, let's kind of step back. I think there's some trends that are happening in the world that really are putting an eye on what things like COVID and sustainability and environment are doing to impact the business. And I believe, and you can see it through the recent signage, I can't remember what it's called, it's sort of a corporate responsibility pack with CEOs. And I do think a lot of corporations are starting to think not only about, I think obviously you've got to make money, you've got to hit the bottom line, but kind of what their role is in society and how this, large gap in income is impacting you. So although I do agree that supplier diversity is not philanthropic, but I do believe that in addition to all of those first four things that we talked about, there is a definite role that growing, developing, investing and being supportive of diverse suppliers does contribute to sort of the shared overall collective good, which I think people are starting to understand. Without that, you don't really have a viable economics. It's the whole question now. Do you deal with the health? And I'm not going to answer it because I don't want to get political. Or you deal with the economy. I get the sense, based on everything I read, that most people believe that there is a very important dual connection. So I do agree that we've got to focus on the bottom line. We got to focus on facts and quantitative, but don't underestimate, as we see trends change, the social fabric or the enhancement of the social fabric that diverse suppliers bring.
Yeah, no, that's very good feedback. And Nedra, we're going to move to question 2. I'll let you start off in this first question 2. Let me know when you see it on the screen.
Yeah,
it ties right. Oh, you're on a delay as well.
Oh, okay. I think I'm here now. I think let me make sure I have the right question.
Yeah, in times, number 2?
Yes.
Question number 2. Yeah, so in times, go ahead. You can go ahead and answer it then. I won't have to read it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess everyone can see it. I think, and again, what the advantage of going behind Kris and Terrez is sometimes I can say ditto, because they just cover everything. But I think a lot of things that's going to be important in reinventing your business model and your new customer base. And I think that's where supplier diversity also plays a good role, is because you have to be very nimble to be able to kind of pivot your business, right? You need to quickly identify some of those cross-skilling opportunities. And I think that's so important, where it comes in having, a very agile workforce and being able to do that. And if I can, back to that poll where you were talking, I think it's going to be really important when people talk about robots and machine. You're going to have to shift to that human machine workforce. And that means that you're going to, I think, leverage a lot more processes that are digital and focused on value-led and driven by data and analytics. But then that's going to free up your talented people to do some of the critical thinking. So I think that's where you're really going to have to start thinking, how are you going to reinvent your business model? And sometimes our small businesses are able to do that very quickly. But then I think Terrez brought up a very good point. It's really going to be where I think collaboration is important for corporations and small businesses to work on their development and to work on the growth and having disaster recovery programs and going back local. And I think one of the other things is you're going to have to adopt a distributed global service model, right? So you're going to have a mixture of your service models from office, from home, from countries to time zones, and then you're going to have to de-risk your organization. And I think that's some of the things that we're going to start seeing, is that what you did with one office is not going to work. You're now going to have that mixture. Right. And as we start having people go back into our office, that's going to be in a phased approach. And so we're still able to some work from home, some be in the office, different countries, different time zones. So I really think that that's how some of the, we're going to highlight some of the things that we're going to do. And then our commitment to our supplier diversity program is ensuring that we are collaborating with those small businesses, with those nonprofit organizations, because I think as COVID has shown, you can't do it by yourself. And I think that's what Accenture's really looked at doing as we're getting new customers, as we're, changing with our supply chain. We have to collaborate with the small businesses. And I believe even if you look at now, many of the small businesses are providing face masks and hand sanitizers, a lot of the PPE things, because they're able to pivot so quickly. And that is really showcasing the supplier diversity and inclusion in our supply chains and opening the eyes to other people in our organization. And we sort of joke that it took a pandemic for people to understand the importance of procurement. No one really liked being a part of a procurement organization, right? You're always seen as cost cutting or trying to do something. Now they see the importance of procurement.
That's a good takeaway. I took notes on there, Nedra. The small minority businesses are agile. I've heard that a lot on calls the last couple months about the speed and adaptability and agility of small minority businesses. And then to tie that value prop back to de-risking your organization. For those on the call that have small minority businesses, tie those two together. That's part of your value prop, is that, you know, we're able to move in agility and very, very quickly. So good points.
Hey,
Kris?
Bruce.
Yeah.
Sorry to jump in. We just got a comment from Sandra Duckworth from Delta Airlines. And
yeah.
she just said that this was a great answer, and she wanted to highlight that diverse businesses should view this as a time and an opportunity to innovate. You know, crisis creates opportunity. So that's what she wanted to add.
Great point, Sandra. No, very good point. Kris?
Yeah, well, you know, we're as we're talking, maybe some recommendations, right? I think Sandra's right in terms of the innovation piece. You know, we went back and looked, and you know, one of the things that we've got going on right now in terms of trying to support small and medium businesses and diverse businesses going through this is a series of webinars. And one of those we just released last week. We had the Boston Consulting Group along with Philippe Joubert, who's on our management committee, and he runs our freight operations. And some of the analysis they did and shared with us was how important innovation is out of a crisis. They went back and looked at, you know, companies who innovated out of the financial crisis and how much stronger they were compared to the average organization coming out of, you know, 10 years later and 10 years into it. That, you know, for those who can, and not every business is going to be in a position where, you know, they're in more of a survival mode right now. But for those who can, you know, right now your competitors are going to be a little slow and a little shy, right? Assets that you need to innovate, depending upon what you're doing, they may actually be less expensive. If you need ground transportation right now, it is plentiful, right? There are, if you need labor, it's available, right? So there's some things that are available now to innovate with. I think Sandra's right on with some of that advice. But I do want to go back to the webinar thing for a second. So I wanted to make sure I took the opportunity to let folks know that if you go to ups.com/webinars, we are releasing every week a new webinar designed to help small businesses, diverse businesses work through these challenges. Obviously, we're leveraging our expertise around supply chain and transportation, digital marketing, e-commerce solutions, e-fulfillment solutions, things that businesses can do to sort of lighten their capital load and digitize their business. So I highly recommend, if you haven't been there before, there's a whole library of other webinars in there as well. But we're focusing right now with some diligence around trying to offer some information that could be helpful at this particular time.
That's excellent. I'm glad you shared the website for people to connect with it. Terrez, Coca-Cola.
Quickly, I think that Kris and Nedra did a great job, and thank you, Sandra, also for your input. One of the things that I will say, and we're probably not going to talk about this too much, but I also think this is a time for supplier diversity professionals to challenge themselves, because I would say Kris and Nedra and I, and probably many of our other colleagues, are very fortunate to work for companies that have historically been committed to supplier diversity, have the resources and the means to maintain the work we're doing, probably in a way that some organizations may not be, and which will ultimately impact the supplier diversity space and the suppliers. So this question I thought was very prescient. I actually think that this is a real opportunity for those of us in the space to truly elevate the importance of supplier diversity, using all tools and means in your chest, in your war chest, while we're kind of focused. I think that you can get out of this period with enhanced engagement, with things like I talked about around the diverse suppliers coming through with innovation and supplying it. You might have a story which you haven't been able to have penetrate that could elevate the supplier diversity professional in a more equal level to come out of this stronger, because I do think that I think that before this, there was some question around kind of where the space was going and the relevancy. I think we were kind of status quo. And I think this is an opportunity to get out of the status quo and really fight to help your colleagues understand the value proposition in order that you can survive stronger and better. And I have not heard a lot of discussions about that, but I do think to this question, there's a really important opportunity to highlight internally your organization's commitment to supplier diversity, to gain advocacy and traction like you may not have had before, or to excel what you already have. I really think we as a profession have to do some internal thinking around how this tragic pandemic could possibly really take us to another level.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Terrez. Avi, let's go to the next poll question because it ties into this. It'll be interesting to see how the audience and attendees agree with you, because there are several answers in here that the three panelists have touched on.
I also want to take this time to say thank you to the attendees who are sending in questions. Please continue to send more. We will have them addressed during the Q&A section of this discussion. Thank you.
And then Avi, one other thing, as I review the next question after this, let's skip question 3, because it talks about really what we just answered here about recommendations to small minority business suppliers to take advantage of this business opportunity in this time. So let's move on to the next question after this.
We'll go to question 4, Bruce. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to be closing the poll now. So get your answers in, and we're going to share the results in 5 seconds.
And then if you would please share them since I'm on that delay, like I said.
Of course. All right, so I am going to share the results. So it's very interesting, Bruce. We have 15% who believe that the key area to focus on right now is building trust. 4% believe it's showcasing transparency. 7% believe it's customer centricity. 15% believe it's fostering innovation. And again, Bruce, we have the majority at 59% saying it's all of the above, each point.
Interesting panel. Any thoughts?
I believe that I agree. I definitely think it's going to take all of the above, but I think that's interesting, the percentage around trust. And you know, when you think about trust, you're almost like the blind leading the blind in this, right? So many of us, just so many unanswered questions around this, and I think so many you know, corporations as well as diverse suppliers are flying blindly and what to do. So I think the trust and transparency goes together, and I think that's where you have to have your customers and you got to be innovative. So I agree with the 59%. And one of the things that we said at Accenture, and if you get a chance to go to our website at accenture.com, you can kind of look at some of the points and more details that I'm talking about today. But one of them we talk about is to turn massive challenges into meaningful change. And that means is like, you know, you've really got to adjust rapidly to the changing needs of the people and the customers and suppliers. So people have got to trust you to do that. You've got to be very innovative to do that. And I think that's where all of it would definitely come, you know, all of the above. And it's open for renovation. And that's what I said earlier. Accenture's not looking at it as a reopening. We're looking at it as an open for reinvention. And I, you know, and we can talk more about that, and I can talk about the other question, but I can let Kris and Terrez see how they feel about the poll.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to sound like the narcissist in the room. But I found it interesting. I'm going to just put this out there, and I'm not going to say anything else. But I did find it interesting that customer centricity was the low point. as a customer?
Yeah. You know, I'm now going to be the devil's advocate on this one. You got the last one there, Terrez. So I get that, right? Because the question, if you're a detail person like me, the question is, what do you focus on during the pandemic, right? And I'm not, during the pandemic, there's a lot of things to focus on. I'm not sure customer centricity would be the top of my list right now. And even, to be honest, transparency is definitely, transparency and trust, critical. And I think critical coming out of this, right? Critical going forward, and that won't end, right? What we have learned about the need to be knowledgeable about our supply chains and how deep our knowledge has to go and how prepared our suppliers have to be. When I hear stories of us loading up desktop computers under the arms of administrative personnel and sending them in a taxi to go home with a monitor and a keyboard and trying to figure out how to flex this stuff, and we've got suppliers who provide these services for us, we're going to have to go a lot deeper in understanding their business continuity and understanding how prepared they are for things. So yes, we're talking about it now because it's impacting us right now, but that will go on to the future. I'm really focused on, for those who can, look at what the opportunity, what are the unknowns, and how can you be a part of the unknowns? So it's that innovation piece I keep going back to, right? What does sales look like in the future, right? How do you stay connected with customers when they might not want to see you as often, right? What does work look like in the future? I think of how much money UPS invests in relocating our management team from one country to the next, one state to the next, to develop us into new jobs. And we're doing okay working at home right now. Maybe we can handle this idea of job rotation and development differently than we have in the past. The whole data integration, all the things that when all of a sudden, your ground was out from underneath you, and you had to figure out, who has a cell phone and who's got a laptop and who's got what emergency contact information, and you realize that this data your companies have is on your oldest systems, right? And somebody's got to be in an office somewhere to make sure we have access to it. It really makes you think differently about data and how you really want to control parts of your business that you took for granted before. So that innovation piece is probably, if Bruce would have let me answer the poll, that would have been my answer.
No, it's a great input from all three of you. You'll see on your screen there question 4, and I know you talked about workplace, Kris, there, but maybe Terrez, kind of how can you see how have you seen the people strategy evolve in respective organizations during COVID-19? And in short, how are you rethinking work and workforces in the workplace?
Yeah, I actually was thinking about Nedra's answer about the whole point of, I can't remember the word that she used. I know you said you were going to steal the elasticity piece. I actually think everything that Nedra said there is the point. I think that we have been talking about this evolution of the workforce because of digitization, the ability to work remotely, et cetera, et cetera. And for a number of reasons, we've had open space, we've had, only offices, we've had mobility, et cetera. And I think COVID-19 has forced us to rethink our paradigms about how we work and where we work and what is essential work. Because I think what I would have thought was essential work March 1st is a lot different than what I'm seeing as essential work now. So we at Coca-Cola are, we're sheltering in place. We've got all the digital tools. We're assessing when we might come back. And it looks like folks like me may not come back, until January, if at all permanently. So, and I think it's positive in many ways because it really is driving efficiency, innovation, et cetera, in a different way. I think the challenge for most there's some folks who are already in layoff mode, et cetera, because they can't afford it. But then the challenge, and I think Nedra kind of hinted at this too, is how do you repurpose the workers? So one of the things that we're doing at Coca-Cola is we know that there are many of our employees, because customers are being hit, that are very valued, but the work that they would do isn't there. So we've got some initiatives that are critically important, and we weren't staffing them appropriately as we prioritize. So we have a whole process that we put in place where employees can, if they have idle time, and it's kind of tough to even want to admit that you have idle time, but we've gotten over that. They can apply in areas that they may not have normally applied in, that may offer them other opportunities. And then just finally, I would say we have, as a company, have been really talking about celebrating failure and elevating our risk profile. Well, like everything else, we talked about it, and I think there were some people who were brave enough to do it. But I think it's really happening now. You see the dynamism, you see the innovation, you see the collaboration. So in many ways, this has really moved us forward in a positive way. You know, there are going to be some gaps and challenges that we have to face once the dust settles. But for right now, I see a net positive as it relates to workforce development, innovation, etc.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Terrez. Kris, final thought on this one, and then we'll move.
Yeah, well, I think I have to at least take a moment here and recognize, you know, I feel so fortunate, like many of us who are able to work from home, but of the 495,000 UPSers, most of them can't do that, and they're out delivering and moving packages today, and I am super proud of them working through this as successfully and in good humor and hard work as they can. But it has forced us to really think about our processes and our delivery pieces, and you know, some have been very challenging. Some I think we're going to find some great long-term benefits from if we stick with them. We'll see what the future holds. But you know, things like, you know, not getting signatures for delivery because we don't want to pass equipment around between people, and changing how some of those interactions happen have really been fascinating. And our engineers have been working very, very hard to work through those types of procedures. I don't know what the future holds for some of those procedures, but you know, we've been doing this for 112 years, and this, you know, like every little company, every big company has to innovate too, and sometimes it takes a jolt to make you relook at how you do things, and we've certainly experienced that jolt. So I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Very good. Well, I'm just getting some good insights on questions from several of the audience that are coming in. So what we're going to do, rather than queuing up our next question, we're going to give some more time to Q&A because there's some outstanding questions coming in. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to our final poll, Avi, the speaker poll.
Yes, we're on the speaker poll right now. So we're going to see which speaker did the best, and everybody's going to vote.
Very good. So the poll is open.
We can't see that one.
This is.
You really got to let me in.
This. I want to thank Kris, Oswald, Terrez. We were on a prep call, and Kris says, "Boy, this would be a great audience attendee poll question." So we're going to see what everybody thinks about these amazing panelists today, and let's move to. Is the poll ready to close, Avi?
I think we're ready to close, Bruce. Why don't we see the results? Wow, would you look at that?
Oh my gosh! You're kidding me! Oh my goodness! Wow, that is great job. The
you know, I think
audience
that's
is saying 100%. Kris, great poll question.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're a data company. What can I say?
Well, you know, VDart, we're have a little fun kind of company. Even though we're digital and technology, you know how we roll, right? It's part of our culture. Well, let's go into the Q&A, Avi.
Yeah, so the first question is from Cynthia Myers, who said that several of the panelists mentioned how small businesses should be pivoting. Elaborate on that and give some examples on what is it that they should exactly pivot?
Well, I can answer COVID specific and then future. So many of our diverse suppliers actually saved our hides as it related to the initial burst in need for PPE. There was a woman-owned business based out of Tennessee who really came through for us and converted. She has a proprietary sanitizing industrial product that she uses, and she basically converted and was able to supply us with a significant number of sanitizers. And we have about 2 or 3 examples of that happening. And so for me, that was a proof point that all the stuff that we always say about diverse suppliers being innovative was there. So you do have to have that mindset in the short run and the long term. But then, Cynthia, I would say, you know, long-term thinking, when I talk about pivot, because I think PPE is great, but it's only the beginning, and diverse suppliers can't, you know, live on that alone unless that's their core business. And so I think that the trends have not really changed, they've accelerated. And so, you know, I think that looking at what you're doing now and understanding whether it's meeting future needs, we really got to start thinking about future needs is really critical. And then right now, really adapting your processes, your strategies to change. We've talked about it, digitization of the supply chain, AI. I think in my space, co-manufacturing, warehousing, and co-packing is going to be very, very important. How, you know, and helping us understand how we optimize our supply chain in unique and different ways. So I would say, you know, there's the pivot that you can do tactically to make, you know, short-term gains, which I see by leaps and bounds. But then there's also you see the trends, it's accelerating at such a pace. And what is it that you do today in your core competency that can help you rise to the challenge of tomorrow?
And I would just add, I think what Terrez said is absolutely 100% correct. And I just want to emphasize on what she mentioned around invest in AI and other tools that can really manage your customer interaction. Because I think now this is showing that you really need to understand your customers. And when we say pivot, we're saying, if we've been saying digitize and technology, and we've been saying here is AI, robotics, start doing that, you know, in phases. We know you can't, you know, ramp up as quick as an Accenture, but we start looking for you to pivot in those terms. So it's like, look at what your customers are doing and how can you align with them and be ready to respond quickly. So I agree. What happened with COVID, PPE, there are a lot of diverse suppliers that also saved our behind and getting some things for us immediately. But as the future, I really think you have to look and look at scalability and collaboration. When we say collaboration, that could be with other diverse suppliers. I think you have to be able to work together and not just with a corporate. I'm going to collaborate with Coca-Cola and UPS, so why can't diverse suppliers collaborate together as well? So I think that will be a pivot that's important.
Excellent point.
Yeah, Bruce, I just add one quick thing. I know we've got lots of questions, but I think the other thing is to look for new customers for what you already do. You know, we're seeing that in transportation where so many industries dried up, and so the need for transportation in those industries dropped. But you just look over to another industry, and their transportation need is exploding, and it's looking for customers in areas that maybe you didn't have them before.
Good point. Very good point. Next question.
Yeah, we have 2 questions that I think are really important. I think with time permitting. So this is a question from Surya, who says, you know, because of the COVID-19 situation, it's difficult for small businesses to invest in innovation. Do the panelists see this situation being an opportunity for big businesses and small businesses to co-create, to co-build products?
I'll jump in. I'll say with the right opportunity, it could be a right time. I mean, there's the you know, the flattened situation that we've been through, right, where everybody's adjusting to the situation we're in. But you know, I think for the right opportunity, there could be possibilities out there. Didn't jump up to my mind as the first thing I would go to, but I don't know of an organization who would turn down an opportunity to make something positive like that happen if the numbers were right.
Yeah, I would say. Oh, go ahead, Nedra.
No, go ahead, Terrez. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sure yours will be smarter than mine. Go ahead, your answer.
Oh, it will not. I was just saying exactly.
No, we'll do a poll survey to confirm that. So
no, but I want you to think it doesn't always take funding to be innovative. Sometimes you can have your thoughts and around something that you've always wanted to do and don't have the right funding. That's where you can look at, and I think you can co-create. So it doesn't always have to be this funding that you can have. You can talk to people and come up with ideas. Just protect your ideas, but make sure that it could be other things other than just funds, because we know in this time, funding is very difficult to come by. So I would say this is where you really get into your design thinking and start, seeing where are some of those other opportunities and value add that you can bring in.
Yeah, and I was basically going to say something similar, Nedra. Innovation doesn't always mean coming up with some magical solution to solve the world's problems. I think Kris's suggestion about identifying other customers whose needs you can service is innovation. I think, so I think Nedra is right. But what I would also say, and I kind of said it in a joking way, but that's why I think customer centric is really important. I think all the other stuff is too, but really understanding your customer or the customers that you want to have and what their needs and problems are. So like at the Coca-Cola company, we are looking for innovative solutions around our products. And so if you come to us with something that really sounds different, there are, but it would really have to be unique. We do have means and opportunities and are willing to co-partner and invest. But to me, that's not necessarily the first thing that you look to unless you have something that's truly unique that you've been working on anyway. It's back to like Nedra said, not necessarily making an investment and doing something that's going to blow up the world. That's great, but in most cases, that's not always practical.
No, good points. And I just took some notes here about Kris's point about looking for new customers at what you do best as a small business, just as they're doing in logistics. And Terrez's point about being customer centric, if you're doing that, you're going to land some new accounts in what you do best. And then also, Nedra mentioned earlier about investing in AI and understand your customers. So there's some really great points to what Terrez just mentioned there. Avi, next question.
Yeah, so I think this will be the last question, Bruce. If that's if time permits, I can put in one more.
I'll keep it, Ted. Go ahead.
Okay, so this person has been texting me, emailing me. They've been writing on the webinar left and right. I think you're all familiar with this person. His name is Sid Ahmed, the CEO of VDart. And so Sid wanted to ask to all three of you, have you noticed something new on the slide that you're seeing about VDart? Specifically when it comes to our logo, have you noticed something?
I have noticed something new. I see a lot of dynamic movement behind this new look here.
Yeah, I would say I definitely see a lot of movement on this, and it's just being greater is what I'm seeing in that new logo.
So this is what Sid wanted to add. He just wanted to say that right now, as a minority business, as a small business, what he's looking at is rebranding, because companies don't look at rebranding right now. So he wanted to essentially give it a new futuristic look and be forward looking, and then that should be the new momentum. So just wanted to see if you guys noticed.
I didn't say anything because I would have been cheating. I think that when I was briefed yesterday, we were talking about the new brand and the new logo, so I didn't want to sound like a smart ass.
You got the cheat notes then,
right?
Yeah, so that was one thing Sid wanted to say. And the last thing he wanted to say is normally, small businesses meet you guys at conferences, which is in person. And that's really not a possibility right now. So if a small business wanted to approach you, what would be the best route?
You know, I'm one of those. I actually think LinkedIn and emails really work in addressing our website. I think, though, that all the stuff that we've been saying is that if you have a brand if you have a brand and a product and a reputation that fits in with the needs of any of our corporations, I know these ladies would be willing to talk to you. And we're going to be moving to more virtual matchmaking and capability sessions and what have you. I mean, the trade shows are a way to meet folks in a different way. But generally, we're screening down so many diverse suppliers. We would have probably met the ones. Now, there are a few that you meet in these trade shows that you would not ordinarily meet. I actually think that this period again is going to allow us to be more laser focused on those folks who can really offer us the solutions that we need. Because I think a lot of people come to trade shows and feel a little unsatisfied. Because in my opinion, do it necessarily the best way to meet diverse suppliers and understand their value to the Coca-Cola supply chain.
I agree with Terrez, and I like my term that I call persistent patience. So you definitely have to be persistent, but be patient with us as well. But I think a couple of things. I think one, do your homework when you're reaching out to us, because as we all say, there's so much out there on the internet, and I know it's overwhelming, but we try to put some of the things that we're doing on our website and be, really direct on what you want to talk to us about, and that's where you get my time. But like Terrez, we're willing to talk. I think every day nothing less than 13 to 15 calls a day. But I'm not complaining because I'm at home, and I'm very blessed to be at home to be able to do this. And so we want to talk to you. We want these ideas. We want this innovation. We want to partner together. And I just say, just be a little patient with us, but be persistent, because as Terrez says, this is the new way that we're moving in. And I think when you have a very focused agenda to talk with us, that will not only make us respond, but then that will make that conversation even more meaningful.
Yeah, Nedra, I agree with both of you, actually. I think we're on the cusp of something big in terms of changing how supplier diversity works and making it more effective. This is a time for businesses who aren't certified to get certified, because I think we're at the ground floor of what could be some pretty amazing change. Now, it's going to be hard for the agencies to get used to. Conferences aren't the same anymore, and we got to come up with the right technology to better classify and match suppliers and databases and virtual matchmaking. So it won't be an easy transition, but I think this is going to serve us well in the long term in terms of forcing us to behave differently and allow supplier diversity to be more impactful in an organization. But it does, Nedra, to your point, the most important thing is you got to be more targeted. This isn't about walking through and randomly finding a new customer. It's really about thinking about a plan and thinking about how you can solve a problem for that organization, and then leveraging those RPOs, leveraging multiple RPOs if you join multiple ones, because they've really got some great connections with their local corporations to help get you some face time with people you want to meet.
Can I just say one other thing? And I'm not saying this because, and I say this and I'm not saying it because VDart is hosting this, but I really do believe that diverse suppliers have to see them almost as an equal part of a three-legged stool of corporations, advocacy affiliate groups, and diverse suppliers, especially those with scale and scope. If we had 200 SIDs who are willing to reinvest, pay it forward, B2B, all this stuff. I think, Nedra, you mentioned it. I actually think that that it wouldn't be a fear that you don't have trade shows. because you're really owning and controlling your own destiny. You're developing one another, and you're understanding what's really needed to move the needle with corporations. So my hope also, and I started talking about this before COVID, is that as important as corporations are, as important as the advocacy groups are, I think that diverse suppliers, especially the strong, highly capable ones, have a strong role to play in ensuring the strength of this space as any of us on the phone. Any of us who are panelists.
No, thank you very much for those words, and exactly why the purpose of us having these webinars today. And as we wrap up this webinar today on supplier diversity during COVID-19, again, VDart's purpose and our legacy is to transcend the trajectory of people's lives around the world. VDart, we believe in the greater good, and we also believe in small business being the heart of the American economy. And with that being said, this series, we hope, has been helpful for small businesses, minority businesses, other diverse businesses as well. So if there's anything that we can do to help you out, no matter the size, we've done mentoring programs for some other businesses, and the partnering programs that was mentioned earlier with other diverse businesses partnering with VDart. Please reach out to us. You can reach out to me, Bruce Hay at LinkedIn, or you can reach out to me on my email at bruce.hay, Hay, at vdartinc.com. And with that said, I just want to thank our panelists today, Nedra, Kris, Terrez, for sharing your insights. Great job. Thank you for the attendees joining and the outstanding questions and participation and engagement. And we look forward to talking to you all again in the future. Happy Memorial Day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.